Calling Guts a guy who has problems is a massive understatement because all his life he's been dealing with problems. He was born from a friggin' body hanging from a tree, for crying out loud, and everything that's happened to him since then can actually be called a waking nightmare in more ways than one. But there was a moment in time when Guts actually healed, a moment that changed his life in a manner even he never saw coming. This moment unfolded over the span of two of the most beautiful chapters in the entire series, and in this video, we'll be doing a deep dive on both of them. So, without further ado, this is the Wounds chapter, explored.
Wounds, Chapter 1, Background and Initiation. Wounds Part 1 is officially Chapter 46 in the Berserk continuity, but it feels like it's been building since the prelude half of the Golden Age arc. That was the first time Guts met Casca, and though their relationship was always quite standoffish, there was something there that neither of them had ever done for another person. After fighting off Corcus's robber buddies from the Band of the Falcon and sustaining severe injuries, Guts was bleeding out and his body needed to be warmed up to keep him alive. Casca was chosen for the job on account of this showcases Griffith's heinous side early on. It also serves as a breakthrough moment for their characters. At that point in the manga, Guts was in his angsty teenager phase where he didn't let anyone touch him, no matter what their purpose was. He would rebuke help even if it was offered from a place of kindness, and he saw all kinds of physical contact as confrontation. So when Casca helped heat his body up and he saw that she was a woman, instead of making for his sword like he used to, Guts allowed it to happen. The next day, he was genuinely grateful because she helped save his life, but she hated him because Griffith took an unnatural interest in him, and that was always the thorn in their palms. The fact that Casca loved Griffith, but he needed Guts more than he needed her. Ever since Guts had joined the Falcons, Griffith started placing an unnatural amount of trust in him, and even gave him command over his own unit, despite him being a part of his band for less than a month. This made Casca absolutely hate Guts because before he joined, Griffith would come to her with all of this. The White Falcon's presence loomed large over their dynamic, and it showed in all those moments where Casca called Guts a mad dog, or accused him of going off plan, or even blamed him for trying to get Griffith killed when Griffith was making these dangerous choices of his own volition. What finally broke the ice between them was that battle with the Blue Whale Knights, where Casca contracted a menstrual fever, and Guts not only saved her from falling off a cliff and dying, but also helped nurse her back to health. She opened up to him and told him about her reason for being a Falcon, and Guts gained an immeasurable amount of respect for her simply because she was a woman in a man's world. He would never know what it was like trying to survive whilst fighting your own body, but he could respect it, and he did. So he started looking out for Casca, like when he took on 100 men by himself just to give her a chance to escape, or when he visited her right after the battle for Doldry and got her to a doctor in one of the funniest panels in Berserk. In fact, we'd go so far as to say that the Campfire of Dreams sequence was the prequel to the Wounds chapters, because that's when Casca first started seeing Guts in a totally different light. And though she didn't realize it at the time, the reason she wanted Guts to stay with the Falcons was because her heart had finally found someone besides Griffith to latch onto. Hell, Guts knew he wanted Casca before he left. He said as much to Judo during a conversation they had where he called Casca a fine woman whom he'd trust his back with. But he felt like he needed to eclipse the image of Griffith in her mind, which is why he left the band. For Casca, it was different because she thought that by having feelings for Guts, she was betraying her idol Griffith, and that's the emotion that she's going through once again in the opening pages of the first Wounds chapter. After a year apart, where he trained in the mountains and she ran for her life, Guts and Casca are reunited when the former hears news about a raid on the latter. He thwarts that raid with the remnants of the Band of the Falcon and gets a full update on their situation. Casca is initially cold to him because she has all her men to look after, but when she gets a moment, she takes Guts to a quiet waterfall. There, she unloads on him for abandoning her and everyone else, blaming him for the Falcon's current predicament. He reasons that he had no idea Griffith would do something so stupid as to get caught sleeping with the princess, and while she knows he's right, Casca is too tired to argue. She draws her sword on him and attacks him to get her frustrations out, but when she comes back to reality, she sees that Guts wasn't to blame for anything, and the man truly responsible for their current situation was rotting in a dungeon. She told him to carry on the Falcon legacy and nearly offed herself by trying to leap off of a cliff, but Guts caught her and they kissed. The first Wounds chapter opens with Casca realizing that what she felt for Griffith wasn't a lie, and what she's feeling for Guts in the moment isn't a lie either. She's just hesitant to accept it because she feels like either way she'll end up betraying someone, but Guts puts her mind to ease. He starts by asking her if she's scared, and when she admits she is, he doesn't just say don't be. Casca thinks to herself that she was so sure yesterday that she loved Griffith, and he was the only important man in her life, and that she would have sacrificed herself for him to prove she loved him. She says that by doing this with Guts, she'll end up changing and casting away what was important to her yesterday. Guts changes the topic by focusing on her scars, and though she shies away from him because, quote, she's a woman, Guts says that he knows that firsthand. Casca gets jealous. She's hot-tempered and she will smack him without a thought. He knows she's plenty woman, but he also knows that no one lies their way into a body as scarred as hers. He tells her about the jinx of the battlefield, that the more one thinks about their own death, the closer they get to it. He says death was on her shoulder earlier, but for now, she needs to feel alive. These words, coming from this man who was so hell-bent on verifying his own existence by getting into death matches, feel so profound because Guts has never been this gentle with anyone else in his entire life. He's pouring his heart out, and Casca knows it, which is why she accepts his words and her own feelings for him in the moment. And at first, things are going well, if not a little rough. Turns out Guts likes being in control, go figure. But as they're having Guts starts flashing back to his childhood. His trauma from being assaulted as a kid by a man called Donovan starts to come back to him, and that takes him to Gambino. Gambino was his adoptive father, the man who taught him how to fight, and yet he sold Guts' body to Donovan for the night at the cheap price of 3 silver coins. This PTSD flashback begins so suddenly that at first, Guts doesn't even realize he's choking Casca. He thinks he's choking his younger self, punishing him for killing their father. And that's how the first Wounds chapter ends. Wounds, Chapter 2. The second Wounds chapter opens with Guts choking Casca, and we see just how much pressure he applies to her throat while thinking of himself. He lets go of her when she screams out in pain, and when Casca asks him why he did that, he just breaks down and starts talking about Gambino. All his guilt and pain and trauma come spilling out in that moment, and he rambles about how he hates Gambino for selling him out to that pig bastard. The pig bastard in question being Donovan. He speaks of the night he was assaulted and how he took vengeance by shooting the pig bastard in the back. Casca asks if he's talking about Gambino, and he screams no. He says that Gambino was the one who took him in as a child, taught him how to wield a blade, and all he ever wanted from him was a bit of recognition. Yet, he would give a dog more of his time than the child killing soldiers and generals to earn money to support him, and he recounts the night he killed Gambino. He thought Gambino would dodge his counterattack, because even though he was drunk, Gambino still had the instincts of a warrior, but he didn't. And ever since that day, Guts has been walking this earth with the guilt of being a father killer. He still held on to Gambino's comments from that day when he was 11, when he said that Guts should have died under the tree he was born. And when Casca put her hand on his shoulder, that's when he snapped back to the present. He immediately threw her his cape and told her he'd leave if that's what she wanted, or make it up to her in battle because he knew he'd disgraced himself. Guts was crying about how he'd killed countless men, yet the murder of his father was the one thing that haunted him the most. He hadn't had nightmares about it in the year he was training, but it all came flooding back to him at the worst possible moment. He said it was laughable, and he was ready to abandon everything that he and Casca were doing at the time, but that's when she hugged him. He said resuming things now would just be licking each other's wounds, but she said that was good enough for her. To be honest, she felt like they were finally even because she'd laid her emotions bare before him, and now he'd done the same. She touched the wounds he got from that 100-man stand, and even the one she gave him when she engaged him right before they had. She said she too wants a wound from him someday, and that's what makes him feel okay about everything. He thinks to himself that he will change, while Casca muses that maybe her place was in this man's heart, and that she didn't have to keep taking, maybe she could give something too. After they were done sleeping with one another, Guts dozed off thinking about the one time Gambino was genuinely nice to him and brought him medicine to treat the wound he received during their first training session. And it's subtle, but this is how Miura reconciles Guts' childhood trauma. By having him go through it and having Casca accept him, despite the fact that he's broken, he gives Guts the closure he needed to move on in his life and actually heal from those emotional scars he bore from all those years ago. It's brief, sure, but in that moment, Guts fixes his issues, and the fact is that he never has nightmares about Gambino or Donovan ever again. Through Wounds, he finds purpose, warmth, and even love. and so when he and Casca wake up the next morning, he doesn't have a problem admitting that physical proximity was never a problem with her. Guts feels more confident, more relaxed, and more importantly, at peace with his own path because these 2 chapters show him a future that he could have never imagined. Of course, then the eclipse happens and that changes everything, but for those couple of chapters, Guts' life does become better. Sure, he ends up giving Casca a wound, doing pretty much the same thing Donovan did to him and Griffith/Femto did to her, but that doesn't stain the memory of the wounds chapter in her mind. During the Corridor of Dreams sequence, she looks back on this tryst in the forest as one of the things that kept her sanity intact, and that's after Guts nearly assaulted her. To us, the wounds chapters are representative of the boundless healing potential of selfless love and how it's never too late for someone to find it. And you could even say that Guts' entire journey post-eclipse has been about trying to re-grasp this fleeting embrace even 3 years after it occurred. Conclusion. We know it's not exactly a perfect resolution to some of the most deep-seated issues a human being can have, but the wounds chapters are as close to perfect as they can be. Some of you might disagree with our assertion that they healed the most important open wounds in Guts' heart, but that's exactly why we want you to leave your thoughts in the comments section down below, because this discourse is practically endless. Like, share, and subscribe for more Berserk content like this, and we'll see you soon with another video. Until then, stay safe out there, and remember to always keep on struggling, strugglers. It does get better.